Good morning. I've come to this 11th century castle in Cheshire to talk to you about Britain First and other right-wing organisations and the spread of Islam, the spread of the Jihad. Well, in Europe, it's not the first time we've been faced with violent, aggressive Jihad. It's actually the second time. The first time they were only stopped in France. We're talking 732 AD, but we did have to stop them in France. They were stopped with Catholic gold. They were the only people rich enough by a mercenary army who demanded millions in gold, and they got it because the Roman Catholic Church had already lost millions and millions of acres, millions of followers and donations, taxes, call it what you will. The whole of the Middle East, including Egypt, Lebanon, Iraq, Tunisia, Iran, Persia, Syria especially, was Christian for over 600 years before this prophet who was very good with a knife decided to formulate this ideology. I can't mention this ideology, but I'm sure you'll know which ideology I am talking about. Of course, if you dare to, for years now, if you dare to criticise this ideology, you will be called racist, Nazi, which is in itself, if done without due reason, hate speech, of course, because the fact is, the likes of Paul Golding or Jada or any of the other members of Britain First have never, to the best of my knowledge, been associated with direct racism. I think it would be very frowned upon. As a person that's been several events, I don't think it would be looked took kindly to, especially now since in Britain First we do have several members from ethnic minorities, including one called John Lawrence, who I spoke to at length, from Manchester, not a million miles from where my father was from, and he's a really good dude. He's a really good egg, and he's sick to death of this lack of freedom of speech, the way to stop freedom of speech. John Lawrence actually knew two of the victims of the Manchester bombing. My neighbour's daughter actually went to the Manchester arena that night. I heard them coming back in the car and I sensed something was wrong. It was only in the morning I realised. She was right in the audience. She heard the screams. She saw these poor frightened people jumping off balconies, breaking their legs as they landed. That's how panic-struck and scared they were. They were jumping off balconies, breaking their legs, thinking it would help. Panic-stricken. And let's not forget, at the Didsbury Mosque, it has been proven that, as in many other places, as in the Regent's Park Mosque in London, they have been carrying out jihad hate speech, telling them to attack us and our kids on our own soil, as they did in the Manchester Arena attack, where we know 22 girls, mothers, dads were killed and hundreds were injured. There's people who are at Manchester whose lives will never be the same again, who lost eyes, who lost fingers, who lost legs, who lost feet. These are mostly young girls. But we shouldn't be too surprised at them attacking young girls, or attacking any of us for that matter, because in their holy writings, quote, holy writings, because we didn't read as very holy or nice to me when I read it the other week, from a Quran from the library. Yes, in this ideology, you, I, President Trump, Theresa May, you French people, you Canadian people, all you lefties, all you teachers are, quote this book, the lowliest of beasts, kafir, plural, it's kufar, spelled, in their language, spelled K-U-F-R. Kufar deserve to be killed, deserve to be robbed, deserve to be slaughtered, and this is largely what this ideology did to 600 years of progressive, peaceful, quite advanced Christian civilization all over the Middle East. Didn't you know the Middle East used to be entirely Christian, with a few Jews? Yes, it was. Egypt, Christian. Lebanon, Christian. The Holy Land, Christian with a few Jews. Syria, heavily Christian. If you go onto Google, search now, put in 700 dead cities, and you can actually look at 5th and 6th century churches, abbeys, giant abbeys, and scores of houses and reservoirs, bathing areas that were built over hundreds of years in Syria. In just one part of Syria, near Aleppo, there are 700 abandoned cities and settlements that were wiped out by Jihad. They weren't peacefully converted. They did it the Prophet's classic way, a blitzkrieg tactic. Where do you think Adolf Hitler got the blitzkrieg tactic? Where do you think Adolf Hitler got the Holocaust idea from? From 1915 Turkey. Yes, Turkey too was part of the giant, largely peaceful, advanced Christian empire, the Assyrian Eastern Church, which was led from the Eastern Rome, which is now Istanbul. Yes, Istanbul. Constantinople was the head of the Eastern Christian Church, very much like the Catholic Church. And Constantinople now is in 98% non-Christian territory. And it was the Ottoman Turks and the Seljuk Turks who won this gang their reputation for dealing in slaves, dealing in slave children, dealing in slave women. And this is what built Islam. This is what built the Islamic Empire. Sorry, Richard. This is the flag of King Richard. This is the proper flag of England. Not quite PC. There's 3 lions on my shirt. But it was actually 3 leopards, I'll tell you this for sure. It was actually 3 leopards because they hadn't come across lions at the stage back in the 11th and 12th century. And from 11th century castles, much like this, which were built before the Christian Crusades, this is where Richard I and all those 60,000 Englishmen jumped on ships. He requisitioned every ship to try and stop Jihad at the request of Constantinople, from a letter to Rome. And Richard I's father was a crusader. His mother was raised in the Holy Land, so hardly any wonder he saw it as his duty to there was only England and France that were militarily powerful. They had quite a lot of wealth, and Richard I, Lionheart, because boy, he was a Lionheart. He used to fight on the front line with his knights swinging his sword, and they were terrified of him. At Jaffa, at Acre, at numerous engagements, they were very disappointed at their troops' performance. It's actually said, at the Battle of Jaffa, it's actually said, our men were frightened of them. They stood there like dogs of war, unafraid to die, because they were fighting for their faith, they were fighting for their Pope, and they were fighting for their people. And I, for one, salute him. When you hear about the Crusaders, oh yeah, they did bad things, didn't they? Yeah, well, ask about Saladin's massacres, how he massacred 500, 800 Templar Knights when he was surrounded. He could have took them prisoner, but he hacked all their heads off. This is how kind Islam was. Slave dealing, dominating, stealing children for hundreds and hundreds of years before the first person wearing this symbol even picked a sword up. Before that, the whole Middle East was Christian for over 600 years. This is a fact of history. This is why ISIS go around wiping all the temples out in Syria, in Iraq, because they hate to admit that there was anything before Muhammad. But there was a lot before Muhammad, and it was far, far better than the barbaric, backward ways of Islam. So call it, guys. Please join me and Paul and Andy Sparks and the rest of the guys. We're talking the truth, and your country is just about lost now. All you teachers, you don't know anything about this history, you don't know anything about this flag, you don't know about the slave dealing, do you? You don't know how many people this prophet killed, which was at least 5,000, and it states in the Holy Book, he smited them, the prophet of Islam smited them about their necks. He killed lots of himself to show his followers not to feel guilty. That's the peace of Allah, the peace of the grave. The peace of Islam is when they've dominated you, and as in the future UK, they've stolen your houses, stolen your kids, and wiped you off the face of the earth, just like they did in Syria, just like they did in Egypt. Look at it last year. in Egypt, there's 2 or 3 churches still getting bombed by these Islamic Brotherhood, by ISIS, all these other extremist groups who've been wiping each other out for 1500 years. And you think, if you say anything bad about these people, you're being a racist. The whole of Islam is deeply racist and hateful and supremacist. They are, quote their holy book, you are the rightful masters of the entire earth. This is what their holy book says. It's probably more supremacist than Adolf Hitler's regime, and we all know what we call that, don't we? So if you've got anything about you, stop listening to these idiotic teachers, these idiotic Labour people who don't know anything about history. We don't care. They're just pigs at the trough, sticking their trouts in the money trough, filling their bellies as fast as they can, paying their mortgages, driving their Audis. They don't care what's going to happen. Like Merkel. Merkel's got no kids. None of these leaders have. Theresa May's got no kids. But I've got lots of kids. And I bet you have too. And you better start thinking of their futures. Okay. See you guys. Sorry to shout, but I have to. It's always windy up here. Okay. Have a good one from Patriotic, Peaceful Crusader Dave. And I'll see you at the next Britain First event. See you, Sharon, Paul. All the best, guys. Sorry I couldn't make it in Maidstone. Thanks for the gloves, Andy. See you guys.